On March 15, 2021, in the affluent neighborhood of Brookhaven in Atlanta, Georgia, an event initially thought to be a tragic accident later revealed itself as a calculated murder attempt. Jonathan Price, a 38-year-old architect working for a leading design firm, had established a reputation for designing high-end commercial buildings across the southeastern United States. His wife, Angela Price, 35, ran a prosperous luxury boutique in Atlanta's upscale Buckhead district. The strain in their marriage began in November 2020 when Angela met 28-year-old Derek Caldwell, a personal trainer at a high-end fitness center in Buckhead. Their initially professional relationship quickly turned into an affair. By December 2020, bank statements would later show that Angela was frequently visiting a luxury hotel on Peachtree Plaza to meet with Caldwell during what she claimed were business meetings. Jonathan's first clue that something was amiss came on February 3, 2021, when he found suspicious text messages on Angela's iPhone while she was in the shower. The messages, exchanged with a contact saved as DC, contained explicit content and arrangements for future meetups. When confronted, Angela insisted that DC was a female client named Diana Carter and accused Jonathan of invading her privacy. Tensions escalated on February 28, 2021, when Jonathan reached out to a well-known marriage counselor in Atlanta. Angela's refusal to attend therapy and her remark that Jonathan, who worked long hours, should be the one to fix their issues, marked a pivotal moment in their relationship. The events took a dramatic turn on March 15, 2021, around 9:45 p.m., as the Prices were returning from dinner at an upscale restaurant on Peachtree Road, having argued about Jonathan's upcoming business trip to Miami. Traffic camera footage later obtained by investigators showed their 202 Mercedes-Benz S-Class heading north on Peachtree Road before suddenly swerving off the road near a major intersection. The vehicle struck an oak tree at about 45 miles per hour. Impact analysis later revealed that Angela had not attempted to brake, but had instead accelerated just before the crash. The passenger side, where Jonathan sat, absorbed the full force of the collision. Emergency responders arrived at 9:52 p.m., responding to a 911 call made by Angela at 9:48 p.m., where she claimed that a deer had jumped out and that she couldn't stop in time. Jonathan was rushed to a major Atlanta hospital with severe brain trauma, multiple facial fractures, and internal bleeding. By 11:30 p.m., doctors had placed him in a medically induced coma to control the swelling in his brain. Angela only sustained minor injuries, including a sprained wrist and superficial cuts. Within 48 hours of the accident, while Jonathan remained unconscious, Angela contacted Derek Caldwell through a newly purchased prepaid phone. Later recovered text messages revealed their conversation. "It's done. He won't wake up. We can start planning." Initially, Angela portrayed herself as the grieving wife, making hospital visits and giving interviews to local news outlets about the devastating accident that had changed their lives. However, her composed demeanor and calculated actions in the aftermath would later provide key evidence in demonstrating the premeditated nature of her actions that fateful March evening. During the spring of 2021, while Jonathan lay unconscious in the intensive care unit, Angela began systematically dismantling their shared life. By April 2021, she had listed their house for sale, claiming it was filled with too many painful memories. The house sold swiftly for $1.2 million, with Angela transferring most of the proceeds to her personal accounts. Over the summer, she liquidated several investment accounts and sold Jonathan's cherished collection of vintage watches. Bank statements would later show that more than $850,000 was transferred to accounts solely in her name. She justified these actions to friends and family by citing the mounting medical bills and her need to secure her future, given Jonathan's uncertain condition. By September 2021, Angela had moved into a luxury apartment with Derek Caldwell in Buckhead. The affair, which Derek had initially seen as casual, had now developed into a serious relationship. Angela showered him with expensive gifts and promises of a shared future. She began introducing him as her partner at social events, explaining that while Jonathan was technically still alive, their marriage was effectively over. Medical records from this period show that Angela's visits to the hospital became increasingly infrequent, with her last documented visit occurring on December 12, 2021. During this visit, she spent only 10 minutes in Jonathan's room, and hospital staff noted that she never inquired about his condition or prognosis. On March 23, 2022, just over a year after the crash, Jonathan showed signs of regaining consciousness. Dr. Michael Rodriguez, the lead neurologist, observed increased brain activity and responsive movements. By early April, Jonathan had regained full consciousness, though he remained weak and confused. During his recovery, Jonathan overheard two nurses discussing Angela's new life. One nurse mentioned that Angela had been featured in a local lifestyle magazine, photographed at a charity gala with her new boyfriend. This conversation triggered Jonathan's suspicions about his wife's behavior during his time in the hospital. As his strength improved, Jonathan contacted his longtime friend Ryan Bennett, using a phone borrowed from a sympathetic nurse. Ryan's revelations about Angela's activities over the previous year were devastating. He told Jonathan how Angela had sold their assets, including Jonathan's beloved sports car collection and their vacation home in Florida. Ryan also voiced concerns about the inconsistencies in Angela's story about the deer and the odd angle of impact shown in police photos. After conducting a thorough investigation with Ryan's assistance, Jonathan accessed his financial records, uncovering the full extent of Angela's financial manipulation. The records revealed large withdrawals, including a $250,000 transfer to an offshore account in Angela's name, made just days after his hospitalization. Most alarming was the discovery of Angela's internet search history from the weeks prior to the crash, which Ryan had managed to retrieve through a private investigator. The searches included terms such as car accident survival rates, head-on collision fatality statistics, and life insurance payout spousal death. By May 2022, Jonathan had regained enough strength to walk short distances, though his medical team recommended another month of intensive rehab. However, Jonathan had other plans. The mounting evidence of Angela's premeditated attempt on his life, coupled with her theft of his assets, drove him to action. On May 15, 2022, Jonathan checked himself out of the hospital against medical advice, leaving a brief note thanking the staff for their care. He had carefully concealed his recovery from the hospital administrators, ensuring that no one would alert Angela to his progress. Using cash withdrawn by Ryan from an unknown account, Jonathan checked into a small motel on the outskirts of Atlanta to begin surveillance on Angela's new life. He also began planning what would become his confrontation with the woman who had tried to kill him. By June 2022, Angela and Derek had settled in Alpharetta, an upscale suburb north of Atlanta. They had purchased a modern townhouse with funds that could be traced back to Jonathan. After Jonathan's assets were liquidated, Angela crafted a convincing news story, telling their neighbors that she was a young widow whose husband had tragically died in a car accident. The community, unaware of the dark truth behind Angela's narrative, embraced her. She expanded her retail business, opening a second boutique with Jonathan's funds, and she and Derek became regulars at local social events, with Angela proudly displaying a 3-carat engagement ring. Derek, now working as a private fitness consultant, had fully embraced his role as Angela's future husband. Their wedding was planned for September 2022 at a prestigious venue in Atlanta. From his temporary residence at a budget motel, Jonathan carefully documented their activities using a telephoto lens bought with borrowed cash. He captured photographs of Angela and Derek's daily routines, revealing a lifestyle funded entirely by the assets he had lost. Through close observation, he noted their daily habits: morning runs at 6 a.m., Derek's client meetings, Angela's store hours, and their weekly dinner dates. Jonathan's psychological state worsened as he watched them live a life that should have been his. His medical records, from brief visits to a walk-in clinic during this time, indicated elevated blood pressure and severe anxiety. He started recording video diaries on a laptop provided by Ryan Bennett, documenting Angela's attempted murder and her subsequent theft. The evidence Jonathan gathered was extensive. With the help of a financial investigator recommended by Ryan, he tracked over $2.1 million in misappropriated assets. This included the sale of their house, his car collection, and unauthorized transfers from his business accounts. The investigator also uncovered Angela's concealed credit card statements, revealing large purchases of luxury items in the weeks following the crash. Jonathan set up a secure digital repository containing all the evidence: bank records, property documents, medical reports from the accident, and recovered text messages between Angela and Derek. He included detailed timelines of Angela's actions, both before and after the attempted murder. This encrypted archive was shared with Ryan, with instructions to release it to the authorities if anything happened to him. Jonathan continued his surveillance, documenting Angela's total lack of remorse. He recorded her laughing at social gatherings, planning her wedding, and joking with friends about upgrading from her previous marriage. Using long-range microphones, he captured conversations where she referred to him mockingly as the mistake she had thankfully escaped. By early July 2022, Jonathan's focus shifted from simply gathering evidence to executing his plan. He mapped out Angela's schedule, pinpointing potential vulnerabilities. He observed that Derek typically worked late on Thursdays, leaving Angela alone at their townhouse. Using cash, Jonathan bought disposable phones and created elaborate aliases. He adopted a false identity at a different motel to ensure his movements wouldn't be easily traced. The final phase of Jonathan's plan came into focus after he noticed Angela's habit of enjoying a glass of wine on their back patio every evening after Derek left. Jonathan carefully sketched the layout of their home, noting security cameras and entry points. He studied local police patrol routes and emergency response times. What started as an effort to gather evidence for legal action had now evolved into something darker. Jonathan's medical records would later show that he had stopped taking his prescribed anti-anxiety medication, and his video diaries became increasingly focused on themes of justice and revenge rather than legal action. Local security footage from this period later revealed Jonathan conducting dry runs of various approaches to the townhouse, testing blind spots in the neighborhood's security system. He meticulously planned different scenarios, factoring in elements like weather conditions and the habits of neighbors. His military-like precision showed a mind no longer concerned with survival, but with retribution. On Thursday, August 4th, 2022, around 8:45 p.m., during a heavy summer thunderstorm in Alpharetta, Georgia, Jonathan put his meticulously crafted plan into action. Weather records indicated that rainfall exceeded 2 inches that evening, which provided cover for his approach to Angela's townhouse. The rain also partially obscured nearby security cameras, which would prove crucial in the investigation. Wearing dark clothing and water-resistant boots, Jonathan entered the property through the rear garden gate. Angela was following her usual evening routine, drinking wine on the covered patio, while Derek trained his last client of the day at a fitness center 20 minutes away. The thunder masked Jonathan's approach. When Angela turned to enter the house, she was startled to find herself face-to-face with Jonathan, whom she had assumed would never recover. According to Jonathan's later confession, Angela's initial reaction was not fear, but annoyance, as if confronted by an inconvenient ghost from her past. Their conversation began in the kitchen, where Jonathan methodically presented printed documents, including bank transfers, property sales, and text messages between Angela and Derek from the night of the crash. As Angela tried to deny her actions, Jonathan revealed the full extent of his evidence. The conversation then moved to the living room, where Angela's defensive demeanor shifted to aggression. Medical examiner reports later confirmed that the fatal confrontation occurred around 9:15 p.m. The murder weapon was identified as a heavy crystal vase, a wedding gift from Jonathan's parents that Angela had kept as a symbol of her deception. Autopsy findings showed that Angela was struck 7 times with great force, causing fatal cranial injuries. After the attack, Jonathan carefully staged the scene. He scattered Angela's jewelry box across the master bedroom, forced open a window, and rearranged the furniture to make it appear as though a robbery had gone wrong. He took Angela's wedding rings and other valuable jewelry, later disposing of them in various dumpsters across Atlanta. The rain continued to pour as Jonathan left the scene at 9:45 p.m., carefully avoiding security cameras and using storm drains to move through the neighborhood unnoticed. He had planned multiple escape routes and ultimately used the one that led through a wooded area behind the residential complex. Derek Caldwell returned home at 10:30 p.m., following his usual Thursday routine. His 911 call, made at 10:37 p.m., captured his shock. "Oh my God, she's not moving. There's blood everywhere. Please hurry." First responders arrived at 10:43 p.m. and pronounced Angela dead at the scene. The responding officers immediately noted inconsistencies with the typical characteristics of a burglary. Detective Emma Castillo, the lead investigator, observed that while drawers had been opened and items scattered, the scene appeared staged. The level of violence was excessive for a random break-in, and several valuable items remained untouched. The medical examiner, Dr. Robert Sullivan, documented defensive wounds on Angela's hands and arms, indicating she had tried to protect herself from the blows. The time of death was estimated to be between 9 p.m. and 9:30 p.m., based on body temperature and livor mortis. Crime scene technicians recovered partial fingerprints and DNA evidence, though the rain had washed away potential evidence outside the house. Several neighbors reported hearing raised voices around 9 p.m., but they assumed it was due to the noise from the thunderstorms. Within hours, the Alpharetta Police Department established a command center at their headquarters. The brutal nature of the crime, combined with Angela's prominent position in the community, prompted the chief of police to assign additional detectives to the case. As investigators began to uncover more about Angela's life, what seemed to be a simple robbery homicide quickly unfolded into something much more complex. The investigation into Angela Price's murder officially began on August 5, 2022, when detectives Emma Castillo and Victor Reynolds arrived at the Alpharetta Police Department's Major Crimes Unit. Their first actions involved reviewing crime scene photographs and initial forensic reports from the previous night's murder. By noon on August 5th, the detectives had interviewed Derek Caldwell extensively. Security footage and multiple witnesses confirmed his presence at the fitness center from 7 p.m. to 10:15 p.m. on August 4th. During questioning, Derek provided crucial details about Angela's past, including her marriage to Jonathan Price and the car accident that had supposedly left him in a vegetative state. The investigation took a major turn when Detective Castillo contacted the Atlanta hospital where Jonathan had been treated. Hospital records revealed that Jonathan had checked himself out against medical advice on May 15, 2022. This discovery immediately changed the direction of the investigation, as Angela had been telling everyone. Between August 6th and August 8th, detectives conducted interviews with 23 neighbors. 3 residents mentioned seeing a man who resembled Jonathan watching the townhouse complex during July. Security footage from nearby businesses, though partially obscured by weather conditions and distance, showed a figure with similar physical traits observing the area on several occasions. The financial investigation revealed startling results. Forensic accountants discovered that Angela had transferred over $2.1 million from Jonathan's accounts following the car crash. They also found evidence indicating that the crash had been intentional, including Angela's suspicious online searches and text messages to Derek before and after the incident. On August 10th, investigators located Jonathan's temporary residence at a motel on the outskirts of Atlanta. Inside his room, they found extensive surveillance notes, financial records, and a laptop containing video diaries. These recordings offered a detailed account of Angela's attempt to murder Jonathan, her theft of his assets, and her relationship with Derek. The videos also showed Jonathan's deteriorating mental state and his growing obsession with revenge. The evidence recovered from the motel included detailed maps of Angela's daily routines, security camera blind spots, and multiple scenarios for confronting her. Investigators also discovered receipts for the boots and clothing worn during the murder, along with bus tickets and cash withdrawals, which helped establish a timeline of Jonathan's movements. Medical records obtained during the investigation revealed that Jonathan had sustained significant trauma from the crash, including severe brain injury and multiple fractures. Psychological evaluations during his hospital stay indicated post-traumatic stress disorder and intense anger due to the betrayal. Detective Reynolds' interview with Ryan Bennett on August 12th provided additional context regarding Jonathan's state of mind. Bennett described how he had helped Jonathan collect evidence of Angela's crimes, believing his friend was focused on legal action rather than revenge. He surrendered email correspondences and recorded conversations that demonstrated Angela's calculating behavior while Jonathan was in a coma. Forensic teams processed physical evidence from the crime scene between August 5th and August 15th. DNA analysis confirmed Jonathan's presence in the townhouse, with his blood found mixed with Angela's on the crystal vase. Partial fingerprints recovered from the staged break-in matched Jonathan's right index finger. On August 16, 2022, after gathering sufficient evidence, detectives Castillo and Reynolds obtained an arrest warrant for Jonathan Price. A tactical team apprehended him without incident at a different motel in Marietta, Georgia. During his arrest, Jonathan appeared calm and resigned, offering no resistance or denial of his actions. The state of Georgia versus Jonathan Price began on January 15, 2023, in the Fulton County Superior Court. District Attorney Marcus Wallace led the prosecution, while defense attorney Lisa Monroe represented Jonathan. The trial attracted national media attention, with major networks broadcasting the daily proceedings. The prosecution opened on January 16th, presenting a timeline of Jonathan's surveillance in preparation for the murder. Assistant District Attorney Sarah Mitchell emphasized the premeditated nature of the crime, displaying Jonathan's detailed notes and diagrams found in his motel room. The state's case focused on the brutality of Angela's death, with medical examiner Dr. Robert Sullivan testifying about the 7 distinct blows that caused fatal cranial trauma. Detective Emma Castillo testified for 2 days, presenting evidence of Jonathan's methodical planning. Surveillance footage showed him observing the townhouse complex on multiple occasions. The prosecution argued that the calculated nature of his actions, such as the staged robbery and disposal of evidence, demonstrated clear intent to murder. Defense attorney Monroe shifted the narrative on January 20th, introducing evidence of Angela's attempted murder of Jonathan. Traffic reconstruction expert Thomas Davidson testified that the March 2021 crash showed clear signs of being intentional, with Angela accelerating instead of braking before impact. Forensic accountant Maria Rodriguez detailed Angela's systematic theft of Jonathan's assets, which totaled over $2.1 million. Dr. William Parker, a prominent neuropsychiatrist, testified about Jonathan's mental state, diagnosing him with severe post-traumatic stress disorder. He explained how the combination of physical trauma, betrayal, and a prolonged coma had severely impacted Jonathan's cognitive processing and emotional regulation. The most compelling testimony came on January 25th, when Jonathan took the stand for 6 hours. He recounted the destruction of his life, beginning with the discovery of Angela's affair and ending with the fatal confrontation. His description of regaining consciousness in the hospital, only to learn of Angela's theft and betrayal, moved several jurors to tears. When describing the murder, Jonathan's composure broke. He detailed how Angela laughed at his evidence, mocking his survival and stating that she should have finished the job during the crash. He explained that the crystal vase caught his attention when Angela moved toward her phone, threatening to call security. The prosecution's cross-examination focused on Jonathan's surveillance activities and detailed planning, aiming to establish premeditation. However, Jonathan maintained that his preparations were initially aimed at gathering evidence for legal proceedings, with the confrontation turning violent only after Angela taunted him about the attempted murder. Closing arguments began on February 1st, with the prosecution emphasizing the premeditated nature of Jonathan's actions, while the defense argued for consideration of his diminished mental capacity due to the extraordinary circumstances that led to the crime. The jury began deliberations on February 3, 2023. After 5 days of discussion, they reached a verdict: guilty of voluntary manslaughter rather than first-degree murder. Judge Michael Hawkins delivered the sentence on February 10th, ordering Jonathan to serve 15 years in state prison with the possibility of parole after 8 years. The sentencing hearing included victim impact statements from Angela's parents, who acknowledged their daughter's crimes while mourning her death. Derek Caldwell declined to testify, having relocated to California shortly after the murder. Several jurors later spoke to the media, explaining that evidence of Angela's attempted murder and subsequent theft had significantly influenced their decision to opt for the lesser charge. One juror stated, "We saw 2 crimes, her attempted murder of him and his murder of her. Neither was justified, but we couldn't ignore the circumstances that led to this tragedy." Jonathan was transferred to Georgia State Prison on February 15, 2023. His case has since become a required study in law schools across the country, raising complex questions about justice, revenge, and the limits of human endurance under extraordinary circumstances.